Bipartisanism. This is a phrase that's becoming more and more obsolete in modern American politics. This is due to the high number of wedge issues that pervade the current political discourse. The two prevailing political parties have never splintered this far apart ever in American history. Okay, well, maybe that statement is a bit of an exaggeration, but still, polarization is undoubtedly on the rise in this country. But looking back on American history, there is a surefire method to get Republicans and Democrats to work together, and that is the existence of a boogeyman. But what is a boogeyman, you might ask? It's essentially something that's viewed as non-American, growing in influence, and something that quote-unquote threatens American existence. Both Republicans and Democrats will use this collective fear to come together, pass some legislation, and get some talking points for their re-election campaigns. Some examples of American boogeymen are the concepts of fascism, communism, anarchism, and for the purpose of this video, homosexuality-ism. Today we will discuss the Lavender Scare, an era of American history in which many Republicans and Democrats came together under the collective belief that homosexuals would incite the downfall of America as we know it. This era coincided with the post-World War II Red Scare. With the Nazis defeated, politicians needed a new boogeyman to fearmonger against.
In recognizing a communist, physical appearance counts for nothing. If he openly declares himself to be a communist, we take his word for it.
The growing ideology of communism fit the previously mentioned job description perfectly. Wisconsin Senator Joseph McCarthy led the charge in this witch hunt against suspected American communists. This campaign gave McCarthy significant media attention and prominence in the American political arena. Many other politicians rode the coattails of this movement so they can get a little morsel of political clout. Back in the good old days, nothing got Americans more amped than reading about a congressional hearing in their local newspaper. And this brings us to a notable subcommittee hearing chaired by Republican Senator Kenneth Wherry and Democratic Senator J. Lister Hill. They hoped to prove that America's homosexuals were in fact involved in the communist plot to overthrow this country. Their hypothesis was pretty simple. Communism is a rectangle and being gay is a square. Not all communists are gay, but all gays are definitely communists. These hearings sought to confirm Wherry and Hill's bias. Wherry and Hill convinced D.C. Vice Squad Police Officer Lieutenant Roy Blick to testify for this hearing. Lieutenant Blick claims that Washington, D.C. was home to around 5,000 homosexuals and that over half worked for the federal government. But how did this decorated police officer connect sexual preference to the communist ideology? He said it was through the use of, quote, a well-known espionage tactic. Let me run you through it. Lieutenant Blick said that foreign communist governments would facilitate same-sex orgies, then lure federal employees into these parties, then film said employees performing homosexual acts, then blackmail these employees, then use them as communist spies. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty simple and straightforward process, Lieutenant Blick. Good work. But Wherry and Hill did buy it, and so did the American public. This story made its way to the front page of the New York Times, establishing the fear of homosexuality as one that now existed in the American mainstream. This sparked the mass firing of federal employees who were suspected of being homosexual. The Senate then approved further hearings into this matter as they seek to purge all homosexuals from federal offices. The Huey investigations brought in more department officials to testify against the credibility of homosexuals. Most statements were made on the preconceived notion that if you are attracted to the same sex, then you are of dubious moral character. By the end of Truman's term as president, the State Department fired 425 employees. Incoming President Dwight Eisenhower looked at these numbers and said, "Yeah, I can do better." Within months of taking the office, President Eisenhower signed Executive Order 1004-50, barring gay and lesbian Americans from becoming federal employees, while giving the FBI power to investigate any suspected cases of homosexuality.
They pulled them out of bed in the middle of the night and set them up with lights, brilliant lights in their faces, and started questioning them about their sex life.
In those days, homosexuality as such was no further reason or rationale, was a basis for exclusion from the civil service. And by the end of the year, sort of as a Christmas present, I was out.
Historians estimate that this order forced somewhere between 5,000 to 10,000 employees to resign. The Wary Hill and Hui investigations were the basis for this horrendous executive order. And many historians look back on the Lavender Scare as a dark time in American history. One coincided with a moral panic that was spurred by some Hui investigations. No pun intended. So in conclusion, Democrats and Republicans did come together, and they asked themselves, how can we ensure our government runs more efficiently? Well, by firing thousands of employees because we think they are weird. Thank you.